Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to be starting another reading vlog. So I didn't say weekly because I'm not sure how long this will be, but it is a very special one because I am reading one of my most anticipated releases of the year, Gallant by V.E. Schwab. As with every V.E. Schwab book, I'm very much looking forward to it, and I have actually already started. I'm using this as a piece of paper as a bookmark. So we're gonna just, because I have a story to tell. So I'll tell you what this is about in a minute, and also this vlog will probably be non-spoiler, and then at the end I think I might do a spoilery section. So it is the 1st of March when I have started it, but we're gonna rewind to yesterday. Actually no, like we're going to like last week or the week before, and it was announced by Titan that this is getting pushed back a week. In America, Tor does it, and that was released today as planned. But this one was supposed to be delayed until next week, and so I think the shop just put them out early. Whoops. But I went into a shop yesterday actually. So number one, I wasn't planning on reading much at all this week because I have an essay due on Friday, and it's a lot of words and I'm very stressed about it. And then I also have another essay due next Tuesday, but they were actually both originally due on Friday, and so that was like not a fun time. I was really stressed, and then the one of them got moved back, and so that makes it a little easier. But I still shouldn't be reading this because I still have a whole other essay that I need to do. So yesterday time I was finished at, I knew I was gonna have a bit of time to kill before I could get the bus, so I went into Waterstones and I had a nosy round and I didn't see anything, and then I went to into the next bookstore. The next one I went into, I just walked in there and I was having a nosy, and I went to the fantasy section and the paperback was there, and oh boy did I want to buy it so bad. But number one, it was like €16 for a paperback. It's like one of those big paperbacks, you know. I don't think America does it, but they do it here, where like the hardback and like a big paperback come out at the same time, and then like, you know, like to next year or whatever, normal size paperbacks come out. Basically, if you were following me on Twitter, you saw my whole dilemma with it. And so anyway, I put it back down and I left. And I kind of was like, if I can get to like this point of my essay tomorrow, then I let myself buy it. And so I tweeted out a poll and I was like, hey, should I buy it or not? So should I buy the paperback or should I wait for the hardback? And everyone voted for the hardback, but what I did not anticipate was walking into the bookstore and seeing the hardback. And so I took that as a sign. I didn't go against the Twitter poll. They told me to wait for the hardback. I waited a good 20 minutes for the hardback. I don't know whether it was there yesterday and I just didn't see it or what, but just like on like one of like basically there's like pillars, there's like kind of shelves on it, was just all of these, and I was like, wait, is that the hardback? And it had a sticker right there saying signed by the author. And because that's why I was going to buy the Waterstones edition, but I'm actually not that big a fan of the sprayed edges, and like the shipping is so expensive, so I was like, you know what, it's not worth it, I'll just get the normal hardback. And now I have a signed one, so it's fine. So this is it. It's very short. It's only like 300 and something pages. Then the underneath is white and has a little house on it. And Gallant. The end papers are beautiful. Look at them. Aren't they so cool? And then, as I said, signed by the author. On the bus, on the way home, I started it and I'm about 46 pages in. So I'm up to chapter 5, which is part 2. And which is actually like a good chunk of the book because, as I said, it's not very big. It's very small, and it's definitely more like her other books than Addie LaRue, because I feel like Addie LaRue is very different from her other stuff, and I feel like this is definitely a lot more like them. So the way I think I'm going to do it is I'm going to give you an update every time I finish a part. So I'll tell you what I thought of part 1 in a minute. But as I said, it does feel very much more like, you know, her other, well, I suppose like her other YA stuff, which this is YA, because I I feel like I've seen a couple of people be like, oh, it read very young, and I'm like, yeah, it's YA, that's probably why. I feel like a lot of people haven't actually read her YA stuff. I feel like a lot of people have like read her middle grade stuff and her adult stuff, but not necessarily her YA stuff, like The Dark Vault, The Monsters of Verity. And I really liked them. I love The Monsters of Verity so much. It's one of my favorite series. And so I'm really excited for this because it's kind of been a while since she's done YA, but she has said that she kind of wanted to go for a timeless feel to it, so like that it could be read to younger audiences, but also adults will get something out of it. And so it's and I would say I agree with that so far. Like, it definitely doesn't read like, oh, only teens will enjoy this. I mean, I'm not a teen and I'm enjoying it, and it's definitely like not too difficult to understand that like someone like younger wouldn't get it if you were like reading it together or something. This book, it follows Olivia, and she is in this school for girls. When she was 2, her mother, I think, left her there. She lives a pretty miserable outsider life there. Then one day, like, one of the matrons there summons her and is like, it's your time to go. And this, like, Olivia has nowhere to go. And then the matron is like, don't worry, it's handled. We have a letter from your uncle, and it's saying all about this house called Gallant that she has basically been invited to. That's basically what happens in the first part of the book, and I'm presuming from there very magical, weird stuff is going to happen with this house, because as far as I know, it has like a bit of like, it's supposed to have like a bit of a creepy atmosphere, and so I'm sure it's going to be a very, very strange house. I'm excited. I feel like nothing that I say about part 1 would be spoilers, so you're safe. Because as I said, it is only like the first 40-ish pages, slightly more. But it's very interesting. So like there is actually little pieces of art in there, and then there are also like these black pages, and I don't know how they connect to the story yet, but I have a theory, which I might cut the theory in. I might talk about the theory after this clip, and I'll like put it in the spoiler section at the end. Oh, I'm gonna have so much fun editing this, aren't I? I am really enjoying it so far. I have a really good feeling. Like, it's V. Schwab, so I can always go in knowing that like it's never gonna be lower than like a 4 stars usually. So I'm pretty confident saying that now, that it will be a 4 or a 5. Hopefully it will be my first 5-star of the year. I'm really hoping. The writing is great. I do think it is definitely a little more simplistic than like The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. It's definitely like toned down a bit, but I do think it's like maybe slightly more lyrical than some of her other books. I always say that she has I think in like the Shades of Magic and the Villain series, she has a pretty straightforward writing style. I wouldn't say it's as simple as some. I don't think she is like usually overly flowery or lyrical. I feel like she's a pretty straightforward, but like leans slightly towards like the descriptive, and I like that. And I feel like in Addie LaRue, she like leaned way more into the descriptive, lyrical kind of side, and I feel like this one is like, it's definitely not as far as that, but it's maybe a little further than like Shades of Magic and the Villains. And I'm sure that's going to help with the story, especially if this house is going to be creepy, because there are like ghouls and all of that are in the story so far, and I'm really intrigued how that ties into it, because Olivia seems to be the only one who can see them, but she's going to this family house, and so maybe some people there will be able to see this stuff and all of that. And I do really like Olivia so far. She's definitely a typical Schwab heroine, you know, not like other girls. That is something that V. Schwab definitely loves to do. But I think over time she's definitely gotten better at not having it so that it's like hating on other girls, you know, because that's where I really have a problem with that trope. I don't mind if they're like quirky and all of this, as long as it's like not putting down women who are, you know, super girly and all of this. And I feel like some of her older books can kind of lean towards that, and even though I love them, that's kind of one of my main issues with a lot of her earlier stuff. And I feel like in this one, like, yes, Olivia is definitely not like the other girls there, but I think it's definitely done that she is not like looking down on these girls. She is definitely apart from them because she cannot speak, which is actually something I didn't know going into this story, and it definitely adds a twist because she has so much to kind of say to the world. She's very angry about things, so that's kind of a reason why she is apart from these girls. And it leads to them just feeling like she is easy to pick on. Because of this, she makes herself different from them, and she fights back against that. And so it definitely, like, it makes sense. She seems like a very interesting character, and I like her so far. And as I said, I'm at part 2, so I'm excited to see where the story will go from here. Another author that I love released a book today, River of Silver or A River of Silver. Either way, it's the short story collection for the Daevbad trilogy, and I forgot that it was coming out. I knew that it was in March, but it had slipped my mind that it was the first. And so I saw an Instagram or Twitter that she put up, and I was like, maybe that's just the US one. And I went on SCRIBD and it was there, and I was like, oh my god, I forgot about it. And so I would just like to say, hey authors, can you please respect my deadlines? Because I really want to read that too. Hello, so it is now day 2 of reading Gallant. So I am currently at home. I ended up actually not reading while watching sprints last night, because isn't that just how I am as a person? My sister is graduating today, so I came down home and I was like, well, this is the perfect opportunity to get a bit of reading done. So I then read the entirety of part 2. So I'm now up to page 103, I think. Yeah, 103. So I read that much yesterday, and then I read this chunk so far today. I just realized I kept all my notes on how I'm feeling on my phone, which I am now filming on. I'm a genius, like, so intelligent. We are now at the house, and I will say the standout feature of this part of the book is the atmosphere that is being built. There's definitely a sinister feel about this house. The way it is described, it's like very big and it's very beautiful, but there's just like little things that are mentioned that you're like, that's a little ominous, isn't it? And yeah, so I'm really enjoying that. And I would really love, like, I don't read a lot of horror, but like I do like, like kind of the ones that I do like, I like the more like atmospheric, creepy, kind of eerie feel than like body horror kind of stuff. And I feel like I want like a proper horror novel for this, because I know that she did mention that it has like some like horror elements to it, I think, but I want like a proper one. So I'm really enjoying all the descriptions of this house, and I'm still really enjoying all of the characters. We've been introduced to a few more, because in the school, Olivia is like definitely very isolated by herself, and now that she's at the house, there's a couple of people there. Not a lot. So it's going to be a very small story, I think, with very few characters, but we've been introduced to a few more and I'm intrigued by them. I'm not sure, do I trust them or not? And so I'm enjoying that. And yeah, so I'm pretty sure the next part we're going to continue to find out more about this house. But we did get like a slight reveal, because I feel like, I mean, I kind of knew, I kind of just presumed it already, but it was revealed, and the way that it was revealed, I let out a gasp. I was like, so I was very happy that I was right. And yeah, so I'm really enjoying it so far. It's still sitting at the either 4, it's gonna be a high 4 or a low 5 star, I think. I don't think it's gonna be an all-time favorite, but I am enjoying it so far. So part 3, no new updates. Also, we're gonna ignore the fact that I'm doing this in a public bathroom. Don't worry, no one is here. I don't have any new feelings on part 3. I'm still really loving it. And yeah, the writing is so good. The atmosphere, I love how that like it's like this undercurrent of like something's not right, but like it's never like super blatant. And so I'm really loving that. And I'm still really enjoying the characters. We're getting more of that. And I think the plot is really starting now. So I'm very excited to continue. Okay, so part 4 done. I don't really have many like non-spoilery thoughts about it. And so I think I might just read part 5 and 6. Those are the last 2 together. And then I'll just like wrap up the whole thing with non-spoilery thoughts. But I am really enjoying it. I think it might be a 5 star, but it really depends on the ending. It's kind of like definitely bouncing between the 4 and 5 star mark. It's a really quick read and I'm really having a good time. So I'm going to just try and power through the last, I think it's about 80-ish pages. And then I will come back and I'll give like full non-spoiler review. I finished it. I loved it so much. 5 stars. Are we surprised? Not really. Yeah, I will say once again, this is a YA book, but like it is still like it's still V.E. Schwab, so there's definitely like a tinge of darkness and not all like happy bubbly, which not all YA stories are anyway. But so while it does read maybe a little younger, it still definitely does like some darker stuff as well. But 5 stars, I absolutely loved it. The ending was a little quick, but I still just loved it. It was so well done, and I would have liked maybe just even like 10 more pages at the end, and I feel like it would be like a 5 stars, but it's still a 5 stars anyway, but I feel like it would be like an even higher 5 star if it was like just a small bit longer at the end, if like the action was kind of drawn out a bit. But I'm going to put my thoughts together over the night, and then tomorrow I'll come back and give you like a review. I don't review stuff, let's be honest. See, I don't know where I would put this on my V.E. Schwab ranking because that's just completely wrong anyway. And I've spoken about this, and that annoys me because the most viewed video on my channel is my ranking V.E. Schwab video, which I'll link it down below, but note that it's not true. Because my opinions of books have changed since then, and like I really want to reread like every single one of them and put them in what I would think the order is now, because I think that actually was before Addie LaRue came out. But in that video I say I gave Vicious and Vengeful 4.5 out of 5 stars, and then I gave Addie LaRue 5 stars, and I don't think that Addie LaRue is better than Vicious and Vengeful, and I also don't think this would be better than Vicious and Vengeful, but I would put it above Addie LaRue. And so yeah, so that's all messed up. So Addie LaRue I think might actually be more of a 4 star, to be honest, or maybe just all of her books are 5 stars. But anyway, that's a problem for future Rebecca. I do want to reread them all, and I'll do it eventually. Hi, so let's give my final thoughts on Gallant. So I finished Gallant about 2 days ago, I think. Yeah. And I, I've been sitting with it a little, but it's still absolutely a 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. As I said, in an earlier clip, I really want to reread all of V.E. Schwab's works to like put them in an order and like refilm the ranking V.E. Schwab video, because I feel like my opinions have kind of changed, but I really enjoyed this. I had such a good time with it. It's not a new all-time favorite book, but it's still definitely a solid 5 star. I really loved my time reading it. So I do think that it is important to note when going into this that it is absolutely a YA. Like, it's very easy to read, very quick, and it's a teenager and it's a teenage character and all of this. And so I think a lot of people who are going into this after only maybe reading Invisible Life of Addie LaRue are going to maybe go in with the wrong expectations. People who have read other V.E. Schwab though will probably be pretty familiar with this kind of a story from her. I definitely think it lies somewhere in between both her older stuff, like, like I feel like maybe it's most similar to like a mix of like the Dark Vault, the Near Witch, and the floweriness of Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I think that's probably the combination I would say it reminds me the most of. It's a really solid YA book, but it is YA. Expect that going into it. It does have a very beautiful writing style. It's not as complicated, it's not as many words as in The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, but it's definitely still very beautiful. A lot of descriptions, really creating that atmosphere, that kind of eerie vibe throughout the story, that something is not right. And I think that was something that from the very beginning, that was what kept the intrigue up along, because that's another thing with V.E. Schwab. She often takes like nearly half a book to really get the story going, and I like that because I think it gives you a chance to really get to know the characters and to really build up the world and the like atmosphere and all of that. So I don't mind that, but I know, again, another thing that's personal preference that other people mightn't enjoy. So yeah, so the first half of the book is really just building up this feeling and getting to know Olivia, who I really loved. I loved her character so much. She was such an interesting character to read about. She had so many ideas and thoughts, and her ability to see these ghosts and all of that. I really loved that. There wasn't a huge cast of characters, and there is a slight found family element. Well, is it found family if they're actually kind of related? But when she gets to this house, at first everyone is kind of distant, and you know, why are you here? Where did you come from? And that relationship grows throughout the story, and I really loved how that developed as well. And yeah, I didn't realize how attached I had become to the characters, but I did. I really loved them. The plot, it was a very easy read. It was quick. It was nothing like super flashy, action-packed or anything like that. It was a lot more subtle, but I think the way that the story went and the learning about the past and what this other world is, I really enjoyed how that all developed as well. And yeah, I had a really good time with this. I really loved how it ended because it wasn't, I think it fit the tone of the book as well, because I think very easily in this book it could have been all, and they all lived happily ever after, but there is kind of a bittersweet ending to it, and it fits so well because it is a creepy, weird, magical place to be, and so it's not all like sunshine and rainbows, and I really enjoyed how that all worked out. So my only real complaint with this is that I wish that there was maybe like 10 or 20 more pages just to kind of develop the ending a little more, because while I enjoyed how it ended, I think the action and all of that, there's not a lot of it, but I think it could have been a little more drawn out, and it would have been slightly more satisfying for me, because I think it just all happened very quick at the end. So I wish just like drag it out a little more, and I would have like been an even higher 5-star, but it was a 5-star anyway. So yeah, so that is Gallant. So I'm finished. Woo! And I'm now going to be reading The River of Silver by S.A. Chakraborty, because I put on Twitter, I said that that was going to be my next read anyway, and I could turn this into an anticipated releases vlog, and people voted for that. I don't know how many stories are going to be in it, but after every story, maybe I'll just come in, give you a rating. I'm not sure will I do a spoilery section for it, because it is only out on audiobook, so I feel like a lot of people will be waiting for it to come out as a physical book, and also a lot of people don't really read short stories and all of that, so I feel like I'm not sure will I do a spoilery section, but if I do, you can find the timestamp down below. It's actually a pretty short audiobook. It's only like 10 hours, so, and I listen on 2 or 3 times speed, so I should fly through it pretty quick. So yeah.
Author's note. Though it was more than a decade ago, I can still remember the day I first shared what would become the City of Brass.
Okay, so the first story from River of Silver is done, but they're just like not even necessarily stories, more than like scenes. So the first one followed a character before the story. Yeah, we learned throughout the series the kind of struggles that they went through, and so it was interesting to get a glimpse into this character. Everyone in the series is kind of flawed. That's one of the things I love about it, is like there's 2 sides of the war and neither of them are right. Like they are both quite terrible. And so that's one of the things I love about it, is that like Nari's like an outside perspective and is like, you guys do realize that you all suck. It's a very sympathetic view of the character, because we've seen the way the character changed and what they think is necessary to right all the wrongs, and it's just so different seeing how they interact with other characters and all of this in this story. So I really enjoyed that glimpse. It would probably be like a 4-star. Okay, finished the second story, and I really love that one. So like I'll give like the second one a 5 stars. I really liked that one because it showed the difference in perspective, because there's some characters that we saw in the series and we only saw them as this one thing, as maybe like this helpful person or very kind or all of this, but reading from a different perspective, we see a different side to them that we hadn't seen before. And so that's what I'm really enjoying about just basically all of these stories, is really getting a different look at all of the characters, because we've always been in either Nari, Ali's, or Dara's perspective. There's a lot of parallels between this story and Nari's story, and yeah, it was really good. It was really cute. Story number 3 done. That one's, I liked it more than the first one, but less than the second one. So I don't know. Would it be a 4 or a 5? We'll go with a 4, because I feel like this is one of the characters we've actually seen the least of that was like actually in the original series. Because like some of the other characters were only like mentioned, whereas like we saw this character. See, this is so hard to talk about because I feel like anything could be spoilers. This character is actually like, they changed a lot between like this point and the point where they are in the series, but like it totally makes sense, and you can like see the glimpses of why they are the way that they are, the thoughts that turn into who they are. This one is like one of the stories that really reminds me why I love the City of Brass, because of like the politics. We've had 3 different perspectives from like the 3 different species. So like we had a Shafish, a Deva, and a Jinn, and so like it's seeing every single one of them, and each of them have a different perspective. Oh, this person is the worst. No, this person is the worst. I love how complicated and messy it is. So yeah, and also all of these stories so far have been before the series, but we're getting like closer and closer. I think it's going in chronological order. So far anyway it is. So I think the next story, I just like heard that it's 8 years before the series starts, and that's another important thing, is like there's actually like basically a little introduction at the start. So it's like character name, this takes place 4 years before the start of the story. It contains spoilers for the first 2 books in the series, so it kind of gives you a bit of context. Also, I might stop talking after every single story. Okay, so story number 4. Oh god, I'm already losing count. Anyway, oh, okay, that's my favorite one so far. I love it so much. This one, I think I can tell you what this one is about, because it doesn't spoil like anything for the series really. I mean, maybe like because you know pretty early on in the first book who these characters are. So this one is Montadir's story, kind of. So he is, I actually can't remember, but he's like late teens in this, and he, oh, I love him. I forgot how much I love his character, and I mean, his character changes a lot from this, because he's still pretty like hopeful and cheerful in this. He is in such a position of power, like he is going to be the next in charge, and so you see glimpses throughout the series of him, you know, being just a really caring brother and all of this, but it's kind of something that he has to hold back. And so in this story, it's just him being like the best, most concerned big brother for like however, like 45 minutes I think it was. So like that's literally what it is, and I loved it. And we also get to see another pretty significant side character that is present in the original trilogy. We're getting closer and closer to seeing the characters change into who they are. He was one of my favorite side characters from the story, and obviously he doesn't get his own perspective, so it's nice to get to read from like characters that I like. Hello, so I'm here to wrap this up. So I was updating you after every story in the River of Silver, but then I realized there's 15 of them, and I don't really have that many thoughts because a lot of them spoil the entire series, so I can't talk about them. And so I'm just going to give you a quick like overview. I'll give you a rating for each of the ones that I read, and like if I have any strong opinions on it, then I'll mention it. Not even that long, so I feel like they're not even really long enough to be like classed as like short stories. They're literally like chapters, and like some of them actually are deleted chapters and stuff. And I really enjoyed it. So basically the story behind why she released this is she actually already had most of them already thought written down, and so as I said, some of them were actually in the books and deleted, some of them she just wrote to get a feeling for like characters that we don't necessarily see their point of view, but so she could understand them better. And she was having a hard time drafting her new book, and you know, it was the pandemic and all of this, and she just found herself going back to this world. So she went back to those stories, you know, revised them, added a couple of extras, and then we got this. And I mean, I'm not mad about it. I also want to revisit these characters. I could revisit them forever and ever. I love them so much. Overall, I added all of the ratings up. I did the average, and I think it came out as a 4.53. So I on Storygraph I put it as a 4.5, and on Goodreads I rounded it up to a 5. So the first story was 4. I already just spoke about that. Second one was 5. The third one was 4. The fourth one was 5. The fifth story was a 3. The sixth story was a 4. And I will say, I think a lot of my like favorite stories in here are the ones that followed Muntadir, Ollie, and Denari, and those are definitely my favorite characters, so that adds up. Yeah, so story 6, I didn't tell you anything about that, so I gave that a 4. That is one that is from Dara, and it's actually and that's actually kind of a scene from the first book, so it takes you all the way back to the City of Brass when the characters were first getting introduced to them, and they are just getting to know each other, and they're very annoyed by each other, and just seeing Nari from where she begins, because if you don't know the plot of City of Brass, she's a con woman in 18th century Cairo, and so seeing her as that like mischievous, like I think she was like 19-year-old, so seeing her as that and seeing how far she came in the series, I was like, oh, you've grown up so much. Story 7 was a 5 stars, and another one that like had Muntadir in it as a character, and I love his character so much because I guess for very sad reasons, because throughout the series we see him kind of get squashed, and like not even necessarily because he's pretty squashed by the first book, but we just see glimpses of who he really is, like how much he cares for his family and all of that. And so just seeing that like before and seeing it from like other people's perspective, because some characters in the story are kind of oblivious. Story 8 was a story from Ollie's point of view. I gave it 5 stars. It was a deleted scene from the second book, so it was actually supposed to be a chapter, but it just kind of didn't really fit in, and oh my god, he is so awkward. I love him so much. Story 9 was an alternative prologue for Kingdom of Copper, and I give that a 3 stars. I mean, it's a prologue. And story 10 was one from Nari's point of view, and I gave it 5 stars. I don't have anything else written on it. Story 11 was from Ollie's point of view. It was a 5 stars, and I just said that oh, it's a scene from Kingdom of Copper, but it was deleted, and I really wish it was kept in. I mean, obviously I read it now, so it doesn't matter that much. And story 12 was from Zainab's point of view, and I give that a 5 stars, and I really enjoyed that one because it was like through her life she has grown up with brothers, and her brothers actually have the power in the family just like her father does, but she's always witnessed her mother as a woman who has her own sort of power, and she's never really been able to get that for herself. And so just seeing her being like, okay, what do I have and how can I use it? Story 13 was set after the Empire of Gold, and I'm not going to tell you who it has in it because that would spoil who survives the series for you. And yeah, I think story 13 and 15 were my favorite because they deal with the consequences of it, and we're seeing characters struggle with what they did and what other people did to them and to the ones that they love, and how the things that they did affects people they love. And it's just very complicated feelings because everything is so messy, because people you thought you trusted, you couldn't trust anymore. People you loved, it turned out someone that they knew betrayed you, but they didn't, and that still hurts you though. And so it's all very complicated feelings, and I thought story 13 and 15 really deal with that. And I would love like an even I would love even more stories set afterwards, seeing as they all deal with what has happened to them. I would love that. And then story 14 was an alternative epilogue to the Empire of Gold, which I actually already read because it's actually in my edition of Empire of Gold. I have the paperback one, so I actually had already read that. That was a 4 stars. And then the final story, I think this was my favorite one. And again, I'm not going to tell you whose point of view it was from, but again, it was another 5-star one. And it was just, that was the one I think I had been waiting for the most. I wanted to see what happened to a particular character and how that was dealt with. And just seeing how all of the events of everything that's happened to them has made them very cautious and so afraid of some things. And like, it isn't all like sunshines and rainbows, and the world is still a mess. It didn't just all go away after the book finished. And yeah, the way it ended was, it was so good. And yeah, I could read stories in this world forever. I love them so much. Overall, it's a 4.5, but like, definitely round it up to the 5. So I would definitely recommend you checking it out if you want something kind of like quick and easy and just familiar. I totally recommend it. And obviously if you've read the series, otherwise please don't. I know I didn't talk about the River of Silver as much as I did for Gallant, but I just didn't really have as much to say, and it's because this book, number one, it requires you to have read an entire trilogy. It also requires you to want to read the audiobook and not the physical book, which doesn't come out until October. And people don't like short stories. So yeah, so there's like 3 reasons why I don't really focus on this as much, but I still really enjoyed it, and I still wanted to just share my overall feelings, which is I love them so much. So yeah, so a really successful vlog. So I'm gonna just round it up to a 5-star and say I got my first 2 5-star reads of the year. So that's great for me. So thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe, and we'll see you all in the next one. Spoilery section for part 1. So number 1, I'm really intrigued about the notes and whether or not the house is good or not. And I do think, so I'm presuming that the house is the reason Olivia's father got sick. Maybe like, I don't know, maybe like, so there's obviously, so like I've read the first 2 like gray pages, black pages, and so I presume it, like, well, it's kind of, I think it's supposed to be like kind of a portal fantasy. So I'm imagining this is a man on the other side. So I'm kind of presuming that Olivia's father somehow like said that he like wasted away. And like, yeah, that could just be like any sort of sickness really. But I'm like, it was like something magical that was like, because like in the very first one, it's kind of like things like they're just like turned to ash and stuff. And so I'm like, was it maybe like drawing strength from him or something? And I'm very intrigued to see where that will go. Yeah, so that is my prediction so far. There's something funky going on. So yeah, so I imagine she's going to get to the house and they'll be like, you know, don't do anything weird. You know, if you see anything weird, no you didn't. And then I imagine she's going to go exploring and she's going to find this other world, and probably at first she's going to think that it's so cool, and then I imagine it's going to turn very dark and twisted against her, and then she's going to have to try and figure it out. So that's my predictions. I feel like that's very obvious predictions though. I'm putting this in the spoilery section in case I'm right about stuff. But yeah, I am definitely intrigued about like the black pages. I definitely think like family members have gone to like the other house, and yeah, so I'm going for a shower now, and I think I'm going to, well, I have work to do, and I think I'm going to try and read maybe one more section, and then I will update again. So it's a little later because I had to get ready to go off, but spoilery talk about part 2. So I don't have too much to say. I mean, I always say that and then I talk for a million years. Anyway, so part 2, I'm really enjoying it, and I do have a couple of thoughts. So number one, there was a line on, I think, page, where was it, 67, I think. Yeah, and it was that word again, safe. But what is safe? Tombs are safe. Mary Lance was safe. Safe does not mean happy, does not mean well, does not mean kind. And I like that line. And then literally the next page, it's revealed that her mother is dead. And I'm like, what? Which I kind of presumed that was what had happened. But I guess I was shocked that it was revealed that she was a ghost in the house because, well, ghoul, whatever. Because I guess somehow that means she's connected to the house still, and, you know, she ran away from it. So I'm really intrigued what that means, and I'm also really intrigued about what the, like, missing parts of all of these ghouls mean. I thought that maybe it was just because they're dead and they're, like, fading away or something, but then I'm like, maybe it's because, like, this, as I said, it's supposed to be a portal fantasy, so maybe, like, half of them is trapped in this world and then half of them is trapped in the other world and all of this stuff. So I'm really intrigued to learn what that stuff is about. And then the last thing is, I'm not sure, do I trust Hannah, who's, like, one of the people who works in the house? Because she seems very nice, and I'm suspicious, because why is she so nice? I'm going to start chapter 3 now. Not chapter 3, part 3. Okay, so spoilers for section 3. Part 3. I keep calling it section, it's part. But, so we have now learned that Olivia's dad was from across the gate, which I figured it out, like, I think maybe like 20 pages before it happened. And yeah, so I'm very proud of myself for figuring that out. And I think that's really interesting because I'm excited to see how that affects it, because that means Olivia is part from across the gate and from this world. So maybe it won't affect her as much as the other priors, but also it puts her in even more danger because Death wants something that her parents took from him. So I'm excited to see how that develops. And we've learned that the black pages are Death, as far as I can gather, and he's like in charge of the other side of the gate. Okay, so part 4 done. And I feel like this time I don't have many spoilery thoughts, I don't think. I'm still really enjoying it, and I'm very intrigued because, so Olivia seems, so we finally got her going across the wall, the gate, whatever, to the other Gallant. And so, like, it actually happens pretty late in the book. But, like, that is very typical with V. Schwab. She often has pretty slow beginnings anyway, so I'm not mad about that. And it was a pretty quick read, even though not much was happening. And now a lot is happening. And it seems that Olivia is able to, like, bring life back to the things in this other world, because Death seems to have an ability to turn things to ash and bone, and from what I can see, Olivia can undo that, and I'm presuming that has something to do with the fact that she is a prior and also the daughter of one of, like, the shadow creatures from this world, from the other world. So I'm imagining that it's because she's a mix of the two of them that she has this ability. Really happy that we finally got across the wall, because I was so, like, I was waiting for it to happen, because I knew, you know, a curious girl, she's gonna do it eventually. And so it finally happened, and I am really interested to see where it's going, because it seems that Death had it planned that she would come there and, like, bring something back to life. So I'm intrigued. And I really loved seeing some of her inner thoughts in this one. Bea is a very loud person, despite the fact she can't speak. And the character, like, in the book, it said that, like, she loves to make noise because she doesn't really like silence, and she likes to fill up spaces and all of this. But she's just very loud in her thoughts and opinions, and she's often underestimated, and people don't give her the chance to prove herself, or they don't listen to what she has to say, because they don't think it's worth it, and that is not the case. And so we definitely saw a lot of that in this, especially right at the end, where she wanted to help her cousin, and she's like, and you know, she's like, I can see these schools, I went across that no one else had, I've seen what is across there, I have my mother's notes, all of this. And she wants to sign it, but he turns away and walks out of the room before she's given the chance. And that's like a big struggle for her, because she is a loud person, she has so much to say, and he's not letting her do it. And so I really love her character, and I just kind of want to give her a hug. But also I don't think she would appreciate me giving her a hug. I really love her kind of like relationship with the ghouls, because it said that like when she first saw them, she was scared of them, and then at the very beginning of the book, she has a very like, oh, just go away, leave me alone, I don't care, like they're there but I'm not really going to interact with them. And throughout the book we've seen her interact with them more, especially since she knows that one of them is her mother. And I'm very intrigued by her interactions with her, and I kind of hope that like by the end of the book something will happen with the magic that will like make her mother a bit more solid for a minute, just to have some sort of interaction. But also at the same time, I think that's like one of the great things though about the relationship, is that the mother isn't fully solid, isn't fully there, isn't able to talk to her or touch her or reach for her or anything like that. And like she did at one point try to kind of like nearly like sweep some hair away, but she couldn't. And so I think like I want her to be able to like do that, but also at the same time like that would probably be a bit cheesy. So we're in our final spoiler section for Gallant, and I'm not really going to say much about it. I loved Matthew's development. Like we really got to see him start to care, and we saw this side of him that, you know, family does mean a lot to him. And then of course, you know, she couldn't just leave me be happy, and she had to go and kill him. And like that's the thing, is from reading her books, I know she's not afraid to kill off characters. So like I don't know. Yeah, I know she's not afraid to kill off characters, and yet when it happened I was like, no, you can't do that. And like, yes you can do that. So yeah, I was like, oh, I didn't even see it coming, and I'm like, of course she would. Of course she'd do that. Like he was just coming to accept her as family, and he died for her, and so yeah, I'm very upset about it. But the way the story ended, it was so good. So like the very like last, like the epilogue was brilliant. I thought such a good way of ending it. I do wish that like the action was a little more drawn out, because like, so, you know, she goes over there and she's trying to rescue her cousin, who she thinks is still there, but then it turns out he's not, which I thought that was a little maybe obvious that wasn't going to be some kind of illusion. But I wasn't mad about it. And then Death makes his way through it and kills Matthew. And I wish it was a little more drawn out, because he like crosses over and Olivia follows him, and like there's not really much conflict there. Like he's kind of just like, oh, what can you do to stop me? And she like immediately thinks, oh wait, I can control the ghouls. And it was a little too easy, I think. I wish there was like 10 pages of her just like getting beaten and then, you know, her all of a sudden thinking, wait, he says that he controls the ghouls on that side, but I'm in control here. Like just like a small bit more, draw it out a bit more, and kind of see her coming to that realization, and then the power of all of the priors before, you know? It didn't take away from my enjoyment that much. I just think it would have added more. The epilogue was so perfect because it wasn't perfect. So we see that this house is still holding back the Death. Like it wasn't an easy fix. She didn't kill Death. Like he is still there. He is still very powerful. He is still messing with her mind like he has done to all of the other priors, and she is choosing to stay and fight. And I think that's what made me love the ending so much, because she is choosing her home, she's choosing to fight, but it comes with a price, and she's accepting that, and it is difficult. And then she goes downstairs and Matthew's ghoul is there teaching her piano, and I'm like, oh, he's dead, but at least he's still there, and she has a family, but they're ghosts. And so it was just such a bittersweet ending, because like she has it all, but not fully. And it's, oh, yeah. So a brilliant ending. I loved it. 5 stars. It was so good.